Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
Welcome back to another episode of The Opportunity. I'm your host, Greg Elfring, head of marketing over here at Empire Flippers. And today I am discussing the acquisition of Centurica with my good buddy, Nate Ginsburg. I've known Nate for years and years at this point in my digital career. And it's really cool to see a friend of mine buy what is, in a lot of ways, a friend of the company's. Centurica, we've used Centurica, we've grown with Centurica for years. So this is a really cool interview. One of the things I think is very intriguing, especially for anyone out there listening, and you're looking at acquiring businesses, is something Nate and I talk about called the key person risk, which is a hurdle he had to overcome as he acquired Centurica and started doing integration. Integrations, it's a fancy word for once all the champagne is popped and you actually buy a business, like, what do you do now, right? And usually this is the part that a lot of buyers don't consider. And often this is where they run into the most problems, is right after the acquisition as you're trying to integrate it into what you are doing. So Nate talks about those struggles and how he overcame it and ultimately has a happy ending. And we talk a little bit about how the online world has changed in the last 10 years. So if that all sounds interesting to you, then make sure you give this episode a listen, leave us a review, and let us know what your thoughts are. I'll see you on the other side. All right, I got Nate Ginsburg here with us. So Nate, you and I, we've been friends for over half a decade at this point. Met you pretty early on in my career at EF, but for our audience out there that doesn't know you, give us a quick intro to yourself and where you are in the world right now.
Yeah, man, crazy to think. Has been a while. Vietnam glory
We're
days.
getting old.
Yeah, Vietnam glory days, 2017, 18. But yeah, anyway, so I'm currently in Austin, as you mentioned, was living for years in Asia, in Vietnam, as well as more recently, I was living in Thailand. And yeah, quick backstory of my entrepreneurial journey. Joined the DC community, which is how I first met and connected with all the EF crew, and came out to Asia in the end of 2013 for their big event, which unfortunately I can't make this year. Greg will be attending. We were just talking about.
I'll Zoom you in, man. Don't you worry. You'll be there. You'll be there.
There we
Zoom
go.
you in.
Yeah.
It'll be like 3 a.m. your time. No problem.
Or more like it'll be early my time, late night Asia time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I came out and found and became a part of this amazing community, and then moved to Asia, and kind of Asia became my home base for the following years. And it was there that I met people that were first selling on Amazon, and that really, I was trying a bunch of different stuff and trying to figure out what businesses I could work for myself, and yeah, got into the Amazon stuff and was shown by other people that were living out there. Yeah, it really just broke it down for me, which was super, super helpful. And yeah, that business did better than any of the other stuff that I was doing, and was running and growing that for a few years, and sold that and exited in 2017. And after that, I had a good team, like a small team, but a good team that was working with me on my business.
Was the team your original team with the FBA business you sold, or was it someone else or a different team?
I mean, I sold the business, but I had this great team that was helping me run certain areas of my business that I thought other people maybe could use help with. And so, yeah, started offering services, and that became my company Sellerplex, which, yeah, has grown to around maybe 70 people globally. And we offer a whole suite of full account management for Amazon sellers. We have a big supply chain department, PPC, just kind of general account management stuff. And Sellerplex was getting into doing some due diligence projects. This was now in 2020 or 2021. And yeah, with rise of the Amazon aggregators, we got pretty busy. And that got me thinking about due diligence more, as a service. And
I know where you're going because we're going to definitely talk about Centurica here and your acquisition there. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about those two businesses that you just discussed. So you went to Asia, you started learning about this whole digital nomad stuff, entrepreneurial stuff. You started an Amazon FBA business. You're able to scale that up and you exited. Can you say how big of an exit that was? Just to give our audience some context.
Yeah, it was right around $1 million.
Yeah, so that's huge. I mean, most businesses don't ever get to that kind of size, right? Congrats, it's awesome. And
Thank
then
you.
for our audience to kind of follow along the journey of what you're saying, once you sold that team you had been building with that FBA business, and I know you had a few other businesses as well, you transformed that into a services agency for the FBA ecosystem, right?
Yes.
Awesome. And you're still running Sellerplex right now?
Yeah, I mean, mostly my team, but yeah, we're still growing, expanding, trying to. I mean, with Sellerplex, we've got a lot of really great infrastructure. I mean, I mentioned we got a great team, and a lot of it is pretty scalable. And so trying to figure out ways to leverage that infrastructure. And yeah, I mean, I'm thinking a lot about different mergers and acquisition type stuff that we can do to build on foundations that Sellerplex has to keep growing.
With everything that's been going on in the last 2 3 years with the aggregators, it has been a crazy time. That does dovetail nicely into you going for Centurica, I feel like. So first off, give like a 30-second pitch of what Centurica is for anyone that doesn't know. Anyone that's been around in the space for a while probably already does know what Centurica is, but we get a lot of new listeners on here. So give me the 30-second pitch of what Centurica is, and then what was the thing that inspired you, which is what you were getting to with your Sellerplex story. But tell us like what inspired you to finally pull the trigger with Centurica.
Yeah, so Centurica is a due diligence service provider. So we work with buyers of online businesses to do their due diligence, which is financial verification, some operation stuff, some marketing stuff, scope in our reports. Like you mentioned, Centurica has been around for about 10 years. I mean, it was kind of like, man, I mean, I remember when Justin and Joe were like announcing or launching Empire Flippers, which was like a big pivot. They were kind of selling off or cutting off some of the other businesses that they were working on and to really double down and build EF. And probably around the same time was when Centurica was started too. This was, I mean, yeah, I don't know, you might know EF lore, but yeah, this was probably 2014, 2015.
I'm the lore keeper of the Empire, man. The annals.
The storyteller that you are. But yeah, like this was really at the beginning of the online acquisitions like ecosystem. And, there were some other players and brokers getting started, right around that same time. And also around at that same time was Centurica. Centurica has been around for, basically since the beginning of like the online acquisition space. And, like you said, like it's very well known, has a really strong brand in the space, works with a lot of the brokers and also aggregators. And so, yeah, that was really interesting to me. And just kind of like the brand was what really attracted me the most. Because that was something, I mean, with Sellerplex, it was a couple years old. And yeah, like we've got a decent brand. But yeah, like 10 years of brand and experience, I mean, I think is really cool. And so, yeah, that was probably what interested me the most.
Yeah, I mean, Centurica in a lot of ways is kind of, for lack of a better word, a trophy business within the industry, just because it is like it's been around for so long. Like you say 10 years in a normal business, like, oh, wow, that's amazing. But you say 10 years in the internet world, like, wow, thing is like a centuries old, like multiple lifetimes that pass is the start of this business, which is really cool to see someone in the space that, I know well, like go out and acquire this. So, tell me the start of how that happens. So here you are, you're getting into due diligence, like you're getting more into mergers, acquisitions with Sellerplex. You've already been through, I think at this point, like 3 or 4 exits maybe. And so what was that process like? Did you reach out to the owner of Centurica? Like, did you DM him on Twitter? Like, how did this conversation start?
Well, short answer, yes. Actually, did just reach out to the owner.
Was it Twitter?
It was via email.
Ah, dang it.
Yeah, one of the co-owners, Chris, we were friendly. We'd spoken on the phone a few times before. And yeah, I basically just like reached out one day and was saying, hey, would be cool to hop on a call, connect. We're doing more DD. On that conversation, it became clear that, well, I kind of let it known that I was interested in buying and he was interested in selling. And that sort of kicked off the process that took around 6 months or so. All in all, I used FBA or SBA financing. There's a whole cadence for that.
We will definitely talk about that. We definitely have customers who wanted to do SBA, and in
Yeah,
general, when
no.
we do SBA, it's like, man, this business is going to be sold before this SBA thing gets done in our case. But I do want to explore a little bit of the SBA stuff with you. But yeah, so
Sure.
6 months, was that mainly because of the SBA, or was that, you and Chris kind of like courting each other, seeing, filling each other out?
Yeah, so first contact was right around Thanksgiving, I think. We were chatting and kind of seeing, it's like, are we on the same page? And yeah, just like kind of continuing to talk and explore. And then was waiting for 21 numbers to be finalized for their tax returns in this, then kicking off the next part of the process of like starting the SBA process. And so that officially got started in, say, mid January or late January, and got in contact with the lender, and that started that process. And then, yeah, the whole SBA process probably took, let's see, so we closed right at the end of April. And so that was February. Yeah, the whole SBA thing, probably like 3 to 4 months of the SBA part of the process. But, we had to wait on a couple other things before we were able to start the SBA, stuff with the bank. Then that was sort of the quick timeline.
Nice, man. Well, first off, let's explore a little bit of the SBA stuff. So, explain that process. Like, did you use an SBA broker? Like, what did that look like? How did you even get that process started?
Yeah, so worked with Steven Spears.
I knew that name was going to come up.
Yeah, he's I guess
Little
the
Steven.
guy. So yeah, worked with Steven on that, and basically his team did a little bit of the underwriting, and then they kind of took my application and shopped it around to different SBA lenders, which actually they're banks. So like the bank is the lender that then it gets like backed by SBA or
Hmm.
something like that. And so yeah, I was working with Steven, and he found a bank that was interested, and from there basically got passed off and was working, directly with the bank to move the deal forward.
Was there a lot of like start and stop with the SBA process? You mentioned like Centurica wrapping up his tax returns, but like in terms of how smooth the process was, what were your general thoughts on that? I know a lot of people are interested in SBA loans in general.
I'd say mostly smooth, like nothing huge that came up or had to be kind of significant roadblocks or workarounds. One thing that kind of threw them for a little bit of a loop, I was actually in Mexico on the day that we were supposed to be closing. And like, they're just like, they weren't used to that. And so, so yeah, it ended up like I had to go to the consulate to sign the papers and send it back. And it was like FedEx, but they didn't have next day. It was a little bit like we had to work around a little bit, but it ended up all being fine.
Yeah.
But there weren't any significant, like, I don't know, like, yeah, there's kind of like get something that I'd have to additional forms or a ton of questions and back and forth and this and that.
That's funny on the going to the consulate thing. I recently refinanced my house. I had a kind of a similar situation where like they wouldn't let me pay the actual refinance thing I had to do. And it's all because I don't have an American phone number, or at least I didn't at the time. I hadn't had this phone number for like 6 years, and the bank was like, "If you don't have this phone number, we can't send you the SMS." Like, well, I can give you anything you want, my social, my favorite animal, my first grade teacher. Like, what do you need to prove it's me? Like, your phone number. Like, what? So my dad had to like pay for it. And then when I got back to America, I had to pay. It was like, oh my God, this is such a dinosaur process. What is going on?
Yeah. Fortunately, I've got Google Fi, and anyway, was
Ah,
able to
yes.
work through it.
When I was in Boston at Inbound, I went to T-Mobile and picked up just a payment plan because Google Fi, like for some reason, like I can never get it to work for myself. So like, screw it. I'm just going to have a US SIM card. So now I'm on a payment plan and everything just for like SMS text messages. But
Yeah.
yeah, the things we do when you were remote. So that's cool to hear the SBA process went smooth. That's not something I normally hear. So that is awesome. When it comes to the actual negotiations of what you did with Centurica, like, was there a bit of a meta play there with Centurica using their own services in a way to do the due diligence for the value of the business? Or how did you guys come to the valuation for it?
Well, the valuation was really on me. And so I took a profit multiple. We kind of came to an adjusted earnings number and then applied a profit multiple. And yeah, that part was really led by me. So one thing that made it a little bit tricky in terms of the valuation was that one of the other co-owners was like the main ops person. And so I knew that coming in, I would need to replace him and rebuild on the ops side. And so, yeah, we basically we took their, like the equivalent of SDE, we called it owner benefit, which was basically all of the money that the two owners were pulling out of the business, and then deducted a budget that I thought it would take me to replace the deliverable, and then did a profit multiple on that.
Was that easy to figure out? Let's back up a second. How big was the team of Centurica at the time of acquisition? Was it just Chris and the ops guy, or was there more than just the two owners?
I mean, there's more. Like the main ops guy, Brian, was like, he was the main guy in the deliverables. He had support and some contractors around him. And like, that was the main piece that I had to replace.
Did you worry about like key person risk, anything like that when you were looking at this, or did you work out?
Well, I'll tell you,
Oh, okay, yes.
well, funny you ask. Well, so that's something that I really, honestly, really underestimated. And, I can say this now, like looking back. And I mean, I can very fortunately say that the business is actually, and the deliverables are in like a place right now that I'm really happy with. But yeah, like honestly, I really underestimated what it would take to replace Brian. And I'm good with teams, and I've always been good with teams and hiring. And honestly, I thought that I like knew what I was getting myself into in terms of, what was needed. And yeah, the reality is it was much more difficult. Like I knew what was going on, but not at the depth or the level that really, I needed in order to like know what the team needed in order to deliver what we needed for our clients. And so, yeah, certainly a big crash course in key person risk. And so
I bet, yeah.
and yeah, it ended up coming okay. But yeah, that is something, if I'm looking at another business, and there's ways to mitigate these things as well. Just overly like
Bullish.
yeah, like the biggest thing was underestimating the complexity of the deliverables. And maybe we can get into some of what like the core deliverables of due diligence is. But the main thing, or one of the biggest, is really we're rebuilding financials. And so, and I'm not an accountant. I've learned a lot about accounting, but like basically the core of our financial diligence is like we rebuild their P&L from the direct sources. So plug into the platforms, get bank statements, like all this stuff, and then rebuild the P&L to then match it versus what the seller is saying. So let's say a seller, just for round numbers, let's say $1 million business and it's doing 250K in profit, whether this is e-commerce, whether it's a website, whether it's SaaS, whatever. So the valuation is built off of the numbers that the seller provides in their P&L. And so due diligence, or like a core part of the due diligence, is the buyers hire us to rebuild the P&L to then match, to verify that the numbers are what the seller says they are. So if some of the nuance maybe you don't fully understand, like, yeah, this is deep accounting stuff. Like this is not, what I had a background in. And so, yeah, like I understood the process going into it, but I didn't understand like the depth and the complexity that is actually needed in order to like rebuild the team that delivers this. And so
Let's talk about that. So the Brian risk hits, right? And you're like, oh shit, I gotta learn accounting. So what did you do? Like, did you like bring people over from Sellerplex, or what did that process look like? And I think this is an important thing to talk about just because other entrepreneurs do this too, right? Like we get very optimistic about something, we buy it, like, oh, I have no idea how backlinking works. I thought I did, or whatever it is, right? So let's talk about that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is a big thing, a huge learning experience. I mean, I've been really getting my MBA or masterclass in due diligence from just, from my own experience. And now, we're doing a bunch of projects every month. And I mean, I've learned a ton about how I would approach things or how I would recommend people approach things. But I think in general, it's really easy to be overconfident as a buyer. I mean, at least I was. I'm hoping I'm not the only one. I don't think I'm the only one.
No, you're definitely not. That's why this is a very interesting topic. I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of entrepreneurs can make this mistake. Like if you look at like a big M&A purchases, right? Like much bigger than even what we have or anything in our space. Usually the risk comes from the integration side, like post acquisition. That's the part where everyone's like, the dust has settled, the wine, the champagne bottles have popped or whatever. And like, oh, how do I do this? This is interesting, right? So integration is usually the real big challenge.
Yeah. So this one, maybe we can talk about like how I would do it differently. And so, I mean, I think the first is really just understanding like it's very easy to be overly optimistic. And like you got to balance that. And so, I came in and my original plan was, I mean, what I did is I had a guy that I hired, was like, okay, I hired this guy, Craig. And I was like, okay, and Craig, I thought he had the right experience. And I just kind of trusted him, like, all right, Craig, you replace Brian, and like, boom, done.
Step one, hire Craig. Step two, step three, profit.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. And that's like, I mean, in all my other businesses and all my other experience, like I thought that, okay, I'm just going to hire the right general manager, ops manager, and like this is their job and they'll just take it over and do it. But yeah, like I underappreciated and didn't even really understand enough of the nuance. Like, long story short, Craig was not the right fit. And,
Craig.
yeah. So like, that didn't work out. And then like I'm scrambling and trying to find another solution. And then it's like, okay, well, I did learn a lot from that about what was needed. So then hired another guy who, not Craig, but Greg.
Oh no, it's not me. I definitely would never get this app. You would never
Not
hire
you,
me
of course.
for this.
No, I mean, the thing is, it's like the role, like it needs like a senior auditor, a senior accountant,
Yeah.
like a CFO type person. And so that's what you were saying. Like, I'm not even qualified to jump in and do this. And so, but learned and had this other guy who came in and it was actually like the perfect, I mean, had a lot of great skills and experience that the role really needed. And he was great until then. So he was brought on as like an interim part-time, like executive project manager kind of person. And he was doing a great job until like one of his other clients, he was supposed to be like 20 hours a week for me. And one of his other clients, like dumped this huge project on him. And then all of a sudden he just like didn't have time for Centurica and like things weren't getting responded to. And like this was super challenging and stressful. And then it's like, okay, like I thought I just solved this or bought myself time. And then it was like really a crunch of finding the long-term solution. So Greg was always like interim solution. And then my hand was forced again to like, okay, I need to find like the long-term fit that I can really build around and with. And so then, yeah, finally did find this amazing woman, Paula. So Paula, she was a senior auditor at Deloitte for years, was like a operations manager at HSBC. I learned really like the role it's tricky for a number of reasons. They need to be a senior accountant, auditor. It's like a mix of an ops manager. And anyway, like finally found this amazing woman, Pau. She's been on board for a couple of months now and like is the person that moving forward with and building around. And, there's a happy ending. During the process, again, I mean, things for people to be aware of is like the first is don't underestimate it and really like do better diligence. I mean, I was overly optimistic and underestimated what the deliverables that I had to build. And so be aware of that. I think awareness is the first step. And then don't do that. Like dive in, spend more time really getting into the nitty gritty. And then the other one is like really building in a long transition and support period. And so Brian's been fantastic and, supporting me in this. And there was sort of like the transition period that we outlined in the APA. But yeah, Brian's been available. I mean, he's been great. That being said, if I was doing this again, would like build in a much longer transition period. Really, like as a buyer, I would try to engage the seller for as long of a transition period as possible. And also tying that more to performance-based and earnouts. And it's like, okay, well, like this amount down and then the milestone of the transition being completed. And that's going to unlock a next payment. And then like assuming that revenue is steady.
Did you do any kind of earnout or deal structuring, or was it more just that straight profit multiple that you used with the SBA loan?
Not too much. And this was also like, again, learned a lot going through this. And the thing with SBA is it makes it easy for you to be kind of like less discerning or less, because it's like, okay, like I've got all this leverage. For me, the difference like in purchase price, plus or minus a couple hundred thousands of dollars, it's not really going to affect my down payment. It's going to have a marginal effect on the monthly payments. I mean, I think it was a fair valuation based off of everything that we were discussing, but like I wasn't really driving a hard bargain. So I am thinking of new acquisitions and I am really excited about, like, Centurica is not my last acquisition. It's more like, if anything, I'd say like Centurica is my crash course in M&A, and there are more moves to be made. And like, yeah, a big thing is like there are way more favorable deal structures for buyers because I was using SBA, and it was just kind of like I just had this big chunk of money approved. I didn't really have that much of an incentive to like really negotiate better terms and more of an earnout.
That's kind of like the classic Silicon Valley moment where you just raised all this money and spent $20,000 on like a golden foosball table. I mean, obviously, I'm exaggerating here, but I totally get where you're coming from. You get this huge pile of money and you don't drive the hard bargain because you have the money. Like, you can spend it, right?
Right, and didn't have to. And again, like on my side, it wasn't really going to be a material difference in like my down payment or my
Right.
debt payments. So I was just kind of like, okay, we agreed on this. They
Let's
want it.
go.
I think it's fine. Sure, let's do it. But now, I mean, I'm learning, because now I'm having, similar to you, but like I'm just in M&A conversations all day. And so, yeah, like talking to a lot of different buyers and people that are looking at businesses and this, and like there's so many more favorable ways to structure terms, and like seller financing being a big one. I mean, you got to find the right business, but like if you get a motivated seller, then you could seller finance 80+% of the deal. And again, these are probably not businesses that are listed on marketplaces or with brokers, because they're ones that they're motivated to sell. But when I say motivated seller, it's like they're trying to sell this thing ASAP. And so,
Their house is on fire. They need the money to buy the water.
yeah, I mean, a number of things, or they're just over it and they want to be done. I mean, I'm sure, at EF you get motivated sellers as well, but
Sure.
like if they're
Yeah.
going through the process of working with a broker, they probably are informed by you guys and whoever their advisors, of like, they have some ideas of what they are looking for from their exit versus, a lot of sellers, they're not thinking about an exit. They don't even know they can exit. And so if you can kind of engage them and they're motivated, then like it's much more of, it's a different process. And yeah, in those instances, like, I mean, look, it's a lot different than just like looking in, oh, that's a cool business, I'm going to buy it, boom, you can close in like a month.
Right.
But there are moves to be made, and people are doing that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways to do M&A, and I'm still learning a ton and have been learning a ton. But I'll just say the last important, it's like if I'm a buyer, like as much seller financing as possible is one KPI that I'm going to look at.
Yeah, I think seller financing is absolutely a tool every buyer should use. Whether it's a small deal or a big deal, obviously anything less than 200K, it's highly unlikely you're going to get seller financing. But as you go up and up, especially in the millions or above the 8-figure mark, absolutely. Before we move into some questions on like due diligence stuff that can help the buyers in our audience, I did want to talk, just to wrap up the chapter of you acquiring Centurica here. I think it's really cool that you bought Centurica without necessarily the experience. Like, maybe you thought you had it, like you said, you underestimated what you were getting into. But I think that there's a few important lessons there. Like, so I was watching this video of Richard Branson. He was asked by one of his people about like his dyslexia, basically, his inability to work with numbers. And he's like, yeah, I still don't really know how a profit and loss statement works. And like, this guy is a billionaire. So like, this is one of the cool things about entrepreneurship. You can go and acquire these businesses that like maybe you don't have like the exact skill, but you know what has to happen to get it there. And you went through Craig and a Greg and finally got Pal or Paula. So I think that is just a very cool entrepreneurial lesson, rolling with the punches.
Yeah, well, you kind of got to, you have this thing and you paid a lot of money for it and it's yours now. So you got to figure it out. But also, in one thing that I'll say that maybe wasn't clear. So Sellerplex was doing due diligence projects. And so I had a team with some experience. So I wasn't just kind of coming into this like, oh, I want
Right.
to buy a due diligence company. But that being said, like I did say, underestimated, like, yeah, there was a lot more that I should have been aware of or looking into. And so anyway, but yes, to your point, like entrepreneur, we figure stuff out. And also like, I think most businesses The deliverables are honestly going to be way simpler than audit P&L, which is like, this is like high level accounting, like I've been saying. And so I think most people can go in, especially a lot of the businesses, that are listed on EF, like you can learn these. There might be a learning curve, but you can learn them. And I bet the learning curve is going to be a lot easier than
What
P&L
you just
rebuilds.
did. For sure. So let's get into some of the due diligence stuff for those buyers actually looking at our marketplace or other marketplaces, and maybe they want to use Centurica as well, now that you got the engine roaring again here. So one of my first questions for you is, tell me about like just a very high level overview of these different categories of due diligence. We mentioned financials, but like, is there more components to it than just what you said there? What's the operational? Is there other areas to explore here?
Yeah, sure. So the three main buckets I'd say is financial diligence, operational diligence, and commercial diligence, which also referred to as market diligence. And yeah, Centurica, we do cover all three of them. I will say that like they're all important, but like the financial diligence and the rebuild of the P&L, which we started to talk about or talked about a little bit, you need to make sure that the numbers are what the seller says they are. And like this is a tricky thing because also in like a lot of sellers don't do their accounting correctly.
Yes. We know this firsthand.
Yeah, not because they're intentionally being deceiving. It's just like accounting's tricky. Most entrepreneurs aren't accountants, especially if they're doing like e-commerce and cost of goods, which is again, also that's another level of tricky. Because of that, financial diligence is so important and you want to go through and have an experienced team that like knows how to do this and does understand the numbers to rebuild for you. And so yeah, so that's like one of the main scopes is again that financial diligence, which is rebuilding the P&L. If it's e-commerce, we're rebuilding cost of goods. That's a big area as well because again, just like so many people do it wrong. And then the deliverables, you have the rebuilt P&L versus the seller P&L, and then it's like you dive into the delta and it's like, hey, like our cost of goods was 10% higher. So the cost of goods was higher. And there's all these reasons for it. I don't know how much we want to get into the nitty gritty.
So the financial stuff, obviously that's the core, but maybe go into a little bit of detail on what does the operational and commercial look like. Obviously, both of
Yeah,
those hit the core financial
sure.
product as well, but what's in that?
So the three financial, the objective is really like verifying and understanding any gaps. That's financial. Operations, that's like looking inward into the business. And so looking at, are there red flags? Are there skeletons in the closet? Is there something that could break? So this would be things like key person risk that we talked a little bit about.
Uh, yes.
So that would be like an operational diligence item. There's also like, have they done shady tactics? Have they done black hat SEO? Are they spamming Amazon giveaway platforms? So those are kind of things that you would look for in operational diligence, that skeletons in the closet, red flags, shady tactics, things that really could derail the business. As well as when you're looking like internally, operationally, you can start to see opportunities to like increase the value. And so, stuff that we do or part of our scope could be like an HR and team audit. And so we'll go through, we interview the team, look at the org chart, understand the roles, understand their prices, and we'll come back and be like, look, this is how the organization is currently operating. We think you can save 30% on your OpEx if you structure this differently. You move this person here, you empower this person, you don't need these two people. And we just know because we do a lot of hiring and can say things like, oh, this person is being paid $6K a month or $8K a month or $5K. And oh, we think you can also find these roles for 60% of that price or 50% of that price. So that's operational, kind of looking inward and looking for red flags as well as opportunities to like value creation. And then on the marketing and the commercial side, that's more looking at the market as a whole. And so this is going to be like new opportunities. Where can it expand? More outward facing.
Is that like total addressable market when you say market, like a TAM?
Yeah, that would be in that category for sure. So that's looking outward, like the size of the market, as well as what's going on in the market. So yeah, like what is the overall market trends? How is this business positioned? within the overall market. What are competitors doing? What is this business not doing that maybe it could do? Different channels that it could potentially grow into. So yeah, that's more on the commercial side.
Awesome. So let me ask you this. What, like, in your view, you've bought businesses, you sold businesses, now you own Centurica. What are some of these hidden risks when it comes to due diligence that buyers should be aware of when they're acquiring? Is there anything that like stands out to you as like, definitely be careful of this thing?
I don't know if there's like one in particular, but really, like, again, you want to get clarity on the numbers for sure. I mean, clarity on the numbers, and then some of the like the operational stuff that we've been talking about, key person risk. If I'm looking at a business, because I have a lot of experience and strength on the team side, like I think that's a big asset, an opportunity to come into a business and look at how the team's structured, how much everyone's getting paid, what's the org chart look like, and to be able to come in and there's potential that you could cut 30% of the operating expense. And this is some stuff too, because now I'm talking to some different, so with Sellerplex, I'm exploring some different opportunities, and whether it's talking to other agencies about some sort of merger or acquisition or this. And it's like, with Sellerplex, we have a lot of really like scalable infrastructure in place. And so looking at another agency is like, all right, well, if we team up, we can save these scaling problems and we can cut these expenses. And so I think those are, as a buyer, some opportunity. I mean, it's risk as well as opportunity. The risk is the key person risk, but then the opportunity is improving efficiency and saving costs on the delivery and ops side.
Yeah, I think team structure in general, like in addition with financial stuff, but team structure, I just think is highly underrated in terms of just moving the pieces of the puzzle around. I know that's one of your superpowers. I mean, obviously you got Paula to help you out at the end of the day. And then, like, delegation wins again, right? So that's some cool risks to understand. In terms of buying businesses, why do you think buying an online business is a great investment? Like, what is it about digital businesses that keep you coming back and buying more?
Well, one, it's kind of what I know. And so, stick with it. So yeah, I think that online businesses are great. You can run and operate them from anywhere. You can take advantage of workforce also from anywhere. And yeah, I mean, I think there's like a lot of opportunity, especially if you're an experienced business owner, operator, for you to be able to take your existing skill set and come into a business that has some traction, was bottlenecked by things that you maybe do have good experience with. I think those are really cool opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. I think online businesses in general have such big potential in terms of their profit margins, and they can just grow fast. They decoupled from the local cap that you have, say a laundromat or a plumbing business or whatever. So, yeah, I agree with that. So, you've been around for, like we said, over a decade. We've both been in the online world for a long time. You've seen a lot of changes. In your view, what's some of the biggest changes you've seen take place during your tenure?
Yeah, so a few. I mean, one is just like, I think the quality of the businesses are getting a lot better and bigger. And so a while ago, you weren't seeing people building like actual businesses with a team and a COO or a CEO. And yeah, so like the businesses are definitely, we can say, professionalizing. And along with that, I think that has caught the attention of a lot more of these more traditional acquirers, or like private equities becoming interested in online businesses, whereas 5 years ago they weren't. And there's been this whole aggregator boom and now slowdown, but like rolling up online businesses, I think remains an amazing opportunity. And any of the big aggregators that maybe are struggling now, it's not because the model isn't good. It's they're bought too fast and paid too much and didn't focus on the ops. But like this model of rolling up businesses has been around for, I mean, it's a very established like M&A play. And I think like people notice, and a lot of like the real big players, they don't want to be the first to market. They want to see the first people come in, see what they do well, see what they don't do well. And as they formulate their play, and yeah, so I think like there is and remains a lot of interest and will have continued interest on the buy side. And these professional buyers, they want more professional businesses. So that's incentivizing more of the sellers to create better businesses and more well-structured and well-organized businesses. And that attracts more buyers. And so it's this cycle.
I think that's interesting. The other players are waiting to see what the first people do. Like a lot of people think you got to be the first to market, and it's such the wrong advice in my view. I think being first to market can be really good, but being first to market means guess who gets to make all the first mistakes? Probably you, and they could be really bad, right? So it's often the fourth or fifth person, not even the second and third, that comes in and become the heavyweights. Like EF, for example, years ago, we were definitely not the first. We were probably like more like the fourth or maybe even sixth broker out here. Now we're probably one of the biggest. I definitely say within the top three or four. But the first player, like a lot of people don't even remember that one because that website doesn't even exist. Like it was like the old Warrior Forum and Blackout World stuff, like way back in the day. But yeah, that's super interesting. If you could go back in time to when you first started out, would you have changed anything? Like, what advice would you have given yourself?
Yeah, well, if I could go back in time, then yeah. So this
Sell
was,
that
if
as a
I,
service?
I'd say, if I would have went all in on Amazon in 2012 or 2013, that would have, I think there would have been moves to be made there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess when I was really getting into Amazon, I guess like I couldn't really believe that it would be around and be a thing. And like I thought that it was going to be like peaking. And yeah, so I sold out, or I kind of got out of that a little bit early. Whereas I think that, well, I mean, obviously it kept booming for years later. And so I would have like, well, that would have been interesting insight. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's still early for, a lot of things. And I mean, our careers and the online marketplace has evolved a lot, but still is evolving a lot.
I don't see the market slowing down in terms of the evolution. I see things speeding up in terms of new opportunities coming on board, whether it's Amazon or something else. When I first started, it was all about affiliate websites, and those are still great. I love that business model. And then it switched to FBA, but there's all kinds of crazy opportunities that pop up. Like, for example, we've sold millions of dollars worth of KDP businesses. This is a business model like no one even talks about. We don't even really talk about it. like we sold millions of
Mm.
it. Right? There's just so much like crazy opportunity out there, which leads me into the final section of this interview, the rapid fire question. So Nate, are you ready for the hardest part of this entire interview?
All right, let's do it.
All right. So give me your quick fire answer for these three questions. The first question is, what are the best hidden growth opportunities for investing into an online business?
All right, well, I'm going to say growth via acquisition. And so it's one thing buying into an individual business, but if you have an existing business, whatever the model, getting creative with M&A and buying businesses to around your business to really supercharge your growth.
I agree. I think acquisition in that strategy is a fantastic move. What tools or resources can people use to help them with their due diligence?
One tool that I can recommend, it's, more for people that are searching, but Centurica we publish, it's called the Market Watch. And so we aggregate deals, including EF deals, to scope the market and see what's available. That's pre-LOI. Yeah, to do tools or resources.
All right, that's a great one. Yeah.
Otherwise, like get a good accountant. I mean, I don't know if you're not an accountant, make sure you have a good accountant.
Hire Centurica so you can talk to Paula.
Yeah, there you go.
Those EF deals on the Market Watch, by the way, those look amazing. I know you talked offline about how you buy up a few $1 million worth of EF businesses. And now that I publicly said that, like you're committed.
Oh, it's inviting all the inviting. I don't even know if I can get to them now. All the listeners are going to buy them first. So
hey, that works out great for me either way, man. All right. This is the hardest question of the entire list. Tell me, in your years of experience in the digital marketing entrepreneurship world, what has been your funniest moment working in it?
well, I don't know, what comes to mind. I guess it was like funny looking back. At the time was really stressful, but when I was selling my Amazon business, it was bought by a Chinese buyer, and like I flew to China to make the deal and sell the business. And yeah, I actually I left without a deal. Like I said, there was an offer on the table and I said no because countered with a higher offer. And so left without a deal. And I remember leaving that office. I was so stressed. Did I just mess up this big opportunity? And oh my God, and fast forward, they came back with a counter offer that we agreed on and it closed and it was all fine. Which is funny looking back on how worried and stressed I was. Yeah, I don't know. That's what came to mind.
That's a very stressful period in any entrepreneur's life. That was your first big sell, right? To the Chinese buyer?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that guy. I met him, I think a few months after that. A very interesting cat, but yeah.
Yeah, he was, very active for sure.
Yeah. Well, cool, Nate. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, man. It's really cool to see you buying and acquiring Centurica. Appreciate you sharing the story. I think that is an amazing story that will help a lot of entrepreneurs in their own acquisitions because I think people probably will find themselves in similar situations at one point in their entrepreneurial career, right? So I think that's really cool you shared that. For our listeners out there, where is the best place for them to connect with you, to learn more about Centurica or just to have a chat with you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks everyone for listening. And yeah, if any of this sounds interesting and you're interested in buying businesses or just want to connect, you can find us at Centurica.com if you're interested in diligence or any buy side consulting. Or connect with me just on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, socials, whatever, at Nate Ginsburg, which is a mix of business, M&A, and also handstands. So if you're into
You-
any yoga or fitness, then we can connect on that as well.
I feel like I'm getting ripped slowly watching you do headstands on Facebook. Like it's transferring over to me vicariously. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it works that way.
Well, Nate, it was a pleasure. We will leave the links in the show notes for everyone to go check out Nate, follow him on socials, and go check out Centurica. We've been friends with Nate for years, and we've been friends with Centurica for years. So this is an awesome new chapter in the business. So, Nate, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace, or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell your site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.